Well, welcome. Over 100 years ago, H.L. Mencken wrote, "The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and clamorous to be led to safety by an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary." In these days of 24-hour news and social networks, politicians have much more control over hobgoblins than H.L. Mencken ever envisaged. The hobgoblin of sustainability research in the 70s was radioactive waste. It dominated all the discourse in Britain, especially from Friends of the Earth, and stopped the industrial development of a UK civil nuclear industry completely. I remember the head of Friends of the Earth describing his Damascene moment when he realised that nuclear power was not evil, a bit late. Nuclear power generation is now viewed as green, but the UK current developments of nuclear power stations are led by a wholly owned French state company, not by a British company. Pressure groups and politicians only needed the single word radioactive to justify their position scientifically. Yeah? Radioactive waste is not a big problem because there isn't much of it. The most intense has a short half-life. 30% of it can be recycled, and just as an example, nuclear-powered submarines can operate for 25 years without refueling and can stay submerged for up to 200 days. So the single word was a problem. So, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. As an amusing aside about the science, phlogiston was a substance which was supposed to be inside materials that burn. Wood contained phlogiston, and metal did not. The theory dominated chemistry for 100 years before some phlogiston deniers at Oxford University discovered oxygen and used that to explain why things burn. 100 years. Single terms do not capture either scientific ideas or complex technological systems. Politicians aim at reducing opposition by misrepresenting or discrediting their opponents, not by telling the truth or being open to argument. We have become used to a dominant ideology preventing debate. Attack the speaker, not the argument. The quasi-religious climate denier, indoctrination at schools and universities, the cancelling of people with opposing views. These days we cannot use words like lying, so the term performative has become popular to describe political language. Performative means insincere or inauthentic with the intention of impressing others. Do you remember David Bellamy? Always on TV, always presenting entertaining and informative programs. 22 years ago, he wrote a Daily Mail article calling man-made global warming poppycock. He was immediately cancelled by the BBC and never appeared again. To his death, he maintained the position that the BBC was silencing dissent. The current hobgoblin is net zero, and CO2, the single parameter used to justify technology, as diverse as windmills at sea, many miles from electric demand, solar panels on farmland, heat pumps, electric cars made in China, and so on and so forth. Nowhere has the justification of a complex technical system by a single term led to more ridiculous decisions than the Drax power station. This was once the UK's largest coal-powered, most modern coal-fired power station. Now, it seems that burning coal produces CO2, which the hobgoblin says is destroying the planet. but burning wood does not produce CO2. Why? Because we can grow more wood from trees. So, Drax now burns wood, not coal. Unfortunately, that means burning 8 million tonnes of wood a year. 7 million tonnes come across the Atlantic and none comes from the UK. I didn't know trees grew that fast. Whoops. No accounting for CO2 for the CO2 of pellet production and transporting them 6,000 miles. Drax received £870 million in subsidies by 2024 since converting from coal. You couldn't make it up. A commercial energy production system requires a complete technical evaluation. Money and balance sheets are no basis for decisions about energy efficiency. Consider offshore windmills. Energy is used for making concrete, about 2.5 tonnes per windmill. Transporting it to the site and laying it on the seabed. Similarly for all the other parts. Carbon fibre for the blades delivered from China. When wind farms are operating, ships have to go out for maintenance and repair. The grids to deliver electricity undersea and over land to distant demand and provide backup gas-fired stations for when the wind doesn't blow, and so on and so forth. At end of life, at least the bits above the wave has to be removed and disposed of. Energy accounting says that the energy used to create and run a wind farm from cradle to grave, compared with the energy produced in its lifetime, can be used to measure efficiency and decide whether it is sensible to build it. You can see that this is the polar opposite to a single parameter. It is incredibly complex and there are many, many variables. Energy and other technical variables are quoted, but selective data and timescales are used to support whatever argument is being promoted. Temperature and CO2 are the most misrepresented data because they are fundamental to the argument that our activities are causing global warming. If man-made CO2 is driving our planet's temperature, then the temperature should consistently rise and fall after the CO2 concentration rises and falls, because it's a dependent variable. It's easy to show that annual temperature movements often lead those in CO2, as well as the other way round. So CO2 might be rising because the planet's warming. Both of these deductions are both right and wrong. The data, mathematical data on climate is called stochastic data. It means you can look for pattern in it, but you can't use it to predict. Now, virtually every climate change company, organisation in the world is violating that fundamental rule of mathematics by using stochastic data to predict. They don't tell you that. Fundamental mathematics is regularly ignored by all state institutions. Well, let's leave the science debate for a minute. Let's follow the money. Drax operating profit is about 900 million a year. And if you had bought shares last year, you'd be sitting on 35% profit. Makes your dividend in the bank look a bit silly, doesn't it? Solar power. Hive Energy is preparing to appoint administrators just months after securing a £60 million UK taxpayer-backed loan. Approved by a politician, no doubt. This is all peanuts compared with the offshore wind farms, the creation of a major new industry by a government. We all know that governments are good at that. There are many ways that a government can fund a new industry. The UK tends to use guaranteed prices for their output, paying them when the wind doesn't blow or when it blows too fast. Because there are many ways, it is easy for politicians to fool us by choosing the ones to highlight or hiding the subsidies in general taxation, which is the current trend in the UK. So your general taxation will be used for subsidies, but it won't be highlighted, so nobody will know about it. Whatever the method, you, the taxpayers, fund them. This year, Ørsted, a Danish company, said it would resubmit its cancelled plans for a massive Hornsea wind farm off the east coast of England next year after previously pulling out. So it pulled out and now it's going back in. Why? Well, Miliband offered much higher additional subsidies, guaranteeing payments extending from 15 to 20 years, estimated to cost up to £1.8 billion a year. Miliband was over a barrel. He was so financially and politically committed that he had to give in to Ørsted's threat. The UK started wind farm subsidies 35 years ago, would you believe? So by the time Miliband plan is extended, it will guaranteed over half a century of subsidies. In Europe, nearly 4,000 turbines are decommissioned annually, equating to several full wind farms a year. These subsidies will never end. Electricity generators don't last long in salt water. Lots of the wind farms are advertised as having a 30-year life. One's recently been pulled out at 10 years. Ørsted recently raised $9.4 billion due to material adverse development in the US market. So it had to raise debt in America because the system was different there. What's the difference between the US and the UK? Trump versus Miliband. Trump said no, Miliband said yes. Yeah? A wind farm is well named. It doesn't generate electricity, the individual windmills do. Because the wind has low energy density, there are lots of windmills spread over large areas of seawater. Hornsea 4 off the east coast of England proposes 180 windmills over 190 square miles of seabed. All of these windmills have to be individually connected to each other and to a wire that carry the electricity to the land and then overland to distant demand. That's a real problem with windmills. They're a long way from where you want the electricity. Ideally, you want the electricity to be on your doorstep. Michael Kelly, a government chief scientific advisor, said the scale and cost of rebuilding the UK's electricity grid is so vast the country is heading for an economic crash. He estimates the cost of transforming the national grid could reach £1.4 trillion over 30 years. That's just the grid associated with it. Offshore wind farms are not alone. The taxpayer subsidises solar panels, heat pumps, electric vehicles. Stellantis, which manufactures Alfa Romeo, Chrysler, Citroën, Fiat, Lancia, Maserati, Opel, Peugeot and Vauxhall, sorry, couldn't remember all those, has reported a $26 billion write-down on its electric vehicle business. The chief executive of Ford unveiled a $3.7 billion annual loss 2 months after it booked a shock £15 billion write-down on an aggressive bet on electric vehicles that has backfired spectacularly. In the past year, the world's biggest car makers have written off more than $60 billion from their balance sheets as they retreat from electric vehicles. I think the customer has spoken. That's the punchline, said Jim Farley, the chief executive of Ford. Perhaps he knows more than our politicians. Net zero is financially ruinous. Steadily deindustrialising countries such as UK and Germany are increasingly alone in leading the net zero financial calamity, with energy costs about 4 times that of the US. Jersey has already spent about £1 million on offshore wind farm consultants. They could have had me for free. And about £4 million subsidising 1,200 electric vehicles from the so-called Climate Emergency Fund. It seems that we helped solve the end of the world problem by subsidising electric mopeds. Risible or laughable? Jersey's pledged net zero spending totals around 23 million for 2022 to 25, with actual allocations through 2024 of approximately 15 to 18 million. Total expenditure to date is not publicly detailed. Jersey is coming late to the net zero party, just as everyone else is leaving. Once Jersey politicians commit to the subsidy path, they will be trapped, perpetually industry's milk cow. Jersey needs to solve present-day problems, hospital facilities and healthcare, support for the disabled and elderly, not pretending to save the world. Thank you.